We can go with Weekend at Bernie's as one of the movie selections, or we can go with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So
Okay.
for me, I'm going with the elderly guy that's slightly forgetful, but believes in the institution of the American democracy over the full-on crazy person that possibly needs a lobotomy.
Anthony, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's always good to be on with you guys.
Great pleasure. Can I just start with the story that we're covering every day, Anthony? The Donald Trump hush money trial in New York. It's kept him off the campaign trail a lot of the time, but he's now using it like a campaign stop. And a soapbox seems to be working for him too, isn't it?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, negative attention. I mean, I think Mr. Trump has figured out positive or negative attention is good. I think that, he's on trial for paying hush money to a porn star that he had sex with. And of course, this trial includes business fraud and possible election interference. And so you have to think about the Alice in Wonderland like scenario of all this. You've got these clowns coming in from the Congress. They're dressed up like Donald Trump with the red long ties, and they're talking like this with the hands and so forth outside the courtroom. And so I think it's a bizarre thing. And yes, it's working in the sense that his base likes it. It's working in the sense that his standing looks pretty good in the polls right now. But if you look at the underlying data, I think this is the mistake that people are making. This is why the prediction markets are still 49-49 here.
Yeah.
The underlying data, the likely voters are with Biden. It's 49-45 with Biden. And the other thing that's happening, which people are not talking about, is Mr. Trump and the Republican Party are against the woman's right to choose in this country. And they are also creating challenges to IVF in this country, which is a big way that families are made in the country.
Yeah.
So suburban women and independents, I think, are going to side with Joe Biden when push comes to shove. But we'll have to see. I don't see Trump winning. But, can I just make one last point before you ask another question?
Sure.
Biden's got the money, Trump doesn't. And this is a get out the vote exercise. Everybody in this country knows these two people. They've been on the political stage or in the public domain for the last 5 decades. And so I don't think anybody's forming an opinion. They already have the opinion. And will the Biden camp bring out more voters than the Trump camp? And I think you just have to follow the money, sir. You'll see that he's got way more field offices open in the swing states than former President Trump.
Okay, I'm interested in your analysis of the campaign because you're an experienced campaign watcher. What are the polls and the pundits missing then? Because on the headline numbers in the polls, especially in some of those swing states that decide the presidency, Trump is doing okay. So are you talking about the people who say they don't know? Or are you saying people are going to change their minds? Because the pollsters do talk to people who are not aligned to either Republican or Democrats, the independents.
No, I'm just saying that, yes, I take the polls at face value. And if the election were held tonight, Donald Trump would win the election. I see that.
Right.
I'm not naive, but I'm saying something different. There's a get out the vote apparatus that's going to take place between now and election day. And I'm saying that the current president has way more money to spend, is doing a much better job in the fundraising cycle than the former president.
Yes.
And this will be a get out the vote exercise. And I believe in those swing states, the Democrats are going to be more organized, have more money, and bring out more votes when push comes to shove.
So you reckon,
you just take the calling voting for going for Donald Trump. But remember, you got to get up out of the seat in this country, and you got to show up at the polls election day, or you have to fill out an absentee ballot and mail it.
So you reckon Joe Biden, the guy who you now support, can win the battle of enthusiasm with their voters more motivated? Although
participation, I don't want to say enthusiasm because when Joe Biden talks, it's like watching paint dry. I'm not talking about any level of enthusiasm, but I'm talking about participation, and I'm talking about it's a very large anti-Trump movement in the country. One thing that your listeners should be paying close attention to are these primaries. The last 4 primaries, Nikki Haley is not on the ballot. She's gotten 17, 20, and 25% of the vote, respectively, in the last three primaries. And that's also sending you a message that Mr. Trump has not won over that voter. And I can tell you this from my experience in presidential politics, it dates back to the year 2000, so 24 years of experience.
Mm.
If the candidate can't get the crossover voter, he loses the election. Okay. And I'll just give a couple of quick examples. Jimmy Carter could not win over the Ted Kennedy votes. Ronald Reagan picked George Bush. They unified. They beat Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
If you go back to Barack Obama, he won over the Hillary Clinton votes. He beat John McCain. But Hillary Clinton did not win over the Bernie Sanders voters in 2016. She lost the election. Donald Trump is having a hard time. Now, if you say to me tonight, that Donald Trump picks Nikki Haley, and he's willing to subordinate his ego to do that, and she's willing to accept that, I think that changes the landscape a lot, and I think that would make Mr. Trump the favorite in the election.
Though that doesn't seem at all likely to happen, does it? And the Democrats...
Thank God, yeah, because he's too much of an egomaniac. He would never be able to do that.
Right. The Democrats are hoping that Nikki Haley's Republican supporters either deprived of her as a candidate, they either stay at home on polling day, or they maybe even switch over. Well, I mentioned the New York trial at the beginning of the conversation, Anthony. Just have a listen to this. It's Sebastian Gorka, who I'm sure you know well, former deputy assistant to Donald Trump when he was president. He had this to say about that New York trial on Times Radio.
Really weird, isn't it? How do you create an election, malfeasance? How do you corrupt an election financially after it's occurred? It's a clown show. It's a Monty Python skit. He had that discussion. Mike Cohen said, we did it in January. The elections in America occur in November. The whole thing's a farrago.
Okay, a farrago, a Monty Python sketch, which maybe means more to British listeners than it does to a lot of...
Well, the thing about Gorka that I'm enjoying is that he like schmaltzes up the British accent when he comes on your show, and then he tries to downplay that in the U.S. So I don't know. He seems like a bit of a farrago to me, but he's totally conflating the thing to make a Donald Trump point. The check and the conversation happened in October. The payments were the ones that were being discussed in January because Michael Cohen was being held back. Mr. Trump classically doesn't like paying his bills. And so he hadn't yet paid Michael Cohen the disbursements that were made in the months of October. And so all of that's documented. Seb Gorka knows that. He's just trying to create disinformation because, the Trump campaign is really good at that. They had 7,000 to 8,000 people in Wildwood, New Jersey over the weekend. They said it was 100,000. They then walked it down to 80,000, which is only 10x what they actually had. So these guys like lying. They like lying for a living, and they know that if they repeat the lie often enough, there are viewers and listeners that will actually take credence to that lie. So,
okay, I'll tell you, Anthony, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds of the New York trial. We did mention that.
Trying to explain to you what they do, what their game plan.
I hear what you say. You did say a moment ago that listening to Joe Biden is comparable to watching paint dry. And I guess, it is often said, that or something like it is often said, although he got pretty good reviews for the State of the Union address, but usually it's more critical. When it comes to Joe Biden's performance and his age, there are people who don't bear great ill will towards Joe Biden, who worry about electing a man of his years at this, for a second term, which would, in many people's judgment, mean, well, will he last the course? Are we heading for a presidency with Kamala Harris? That will count against him.
You want me to react to that, right?
Indeed.
So, here's what I would say to you. He's too old to be running for president, and so is Donald Trump. You've got a combined age of 160 years, but these, unfortunately, are the two choices. I will point out that 70% of the American electorate said, no, we would prefer that these two people not be running, and we had two different choices. But these are the two choices. And so now you have before you, we can go with Weekend at Bernie's as one of the movie selections, or we can go with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So for me, I'm going with the elderly guy that's slightly forgetful, but believes in the institution of the American democracy over the full-on crazy person that possibly needs a lobotomy. So if it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or Weekend at Bernie's, I'm going with Weekend at Bernie's. And so it's unfortunate that these are the choices. But I can tell you right now, Mr. Trump is a threat to the democracy. I just want to add this, Seth Bergen notwithstanding, there are 40 cabinet members and people that worked inside of the presidency, face to face with Donald Trump, including the person that was on the ballot with him last time, Mike Pence, who have denounced him, have publicly said that they will not endorse him under any circumstances. And I submit to you and your listeners, what if we worked at a pharmaceutical company or an airline manufacturer or an automotive company? We said that the drug's going to kill you,
Okay.
or the car's going to explode, or the airplane's going to crash. Would you listen to that? So for some reason,
Yeah.
even though you have this warning label and you have people that were right there and see the danger,
Yeah.
there's not enough people listening to that.
Okay.
But maybe that will change.
Well, we do get your thrust on that,
Maybe-
and you express it extraordinarily colourfully.